what does manhood mean to you?
A lot of times, I reflect on the men that have touched my life just growing up and just determining from that, trying to determine what manhood should look like, in my life. And I've had some wonderful, role models. I had uncles. I had my father. He was around and he was able to give me good advice. But my mom and dad were divorced, so I didn't grow up in a household where I had a father figure. My father being that role model who was there day in and day out. But I was able to rely on uncles who actually were in committed relationships, and they showed me, what that looks like. And and I think these days, I do everything I can to really emulate a lot of the things that they showed me in their own relationships. So
Hi, and welcome to another edition of King Crush Thursday, the series where we highlight and uplift Black men, because frankly, not too many people are doing it. My name is Val Gay, and I am super excited and grateful that I get to bring this brother to you today. He is a prolific author in both the fiction and nonfiction areas. He actually is a finalist, a 2015 finalist for the Phyllis Wheatley Book Awards. And he is a brother who is patient because back in the 2024 edition of the Harlem Book Fair, we actually did a live interview. But sadly, the weather decided that all of our audio should be drenched in the downpour of rain. And so we had to do this all over again in this setting. And so please welcome Mr. Jeffrey J.A. Faulkerson, but I get to call him Jeff. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm good, Val. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful that you are here.
It's good to be here. Good to be here.
Thank you. As you already know, because you've kind of been through this as we did it live before, but thank you again, that this conversation really is meant to continue to burst open the narrow and myopic depiction and narrative around Black men in the world, not even just in the American context. Because ultimately, I would love a young king through this repository of 6 questions answered by so many positive and successful Black men to be able to come to see this repository, see the same 6 questions answered by all these different people, and perhaps find guidance there. And then for the rest of us who are neither male or even Black, for us to be able to also see the answers and be able to see you, one, as an individual, but also as the collective you in a more enlightened and heightened, if you will, way. And so I'm so grateful that you agreed to come back. And I want to get started with the first question, which is, what does manhood mean to you?
Well, I guess to me, manhood really means a person who is there to protect and provide. Um, it also, involves just being responsible, for yourself, but also for those around you. That could include a spouse, it could include children. Um, but it all goes back to being able to protect and provide, for your spouse and your child. And and a lot of times, I reflect on the men that have touched my life just growing up and just determining from that, trying to determine what manhood should look like, in my life. And I've had some wonderful, role models. I had uncles. I had my father. He was around and he was able to give me good advice, but my mom and dad were divorced. So I didn't grow up in a household where I had a father figure, my father being that role model who was there day in and day out. But I was able to rely on uncles who actually were in committed relationships, and they showed me, what that looks like. And, and I think these days, I do everything I can to really emulate a lot of the things that they showed me in their own relationships. So manhood is, for me, I mean, it's been defined, through the years, but the baseline has always been with those uncles, that I grew up, just seeing, in committed relationships with their spouses or my aunts, and just really having a healthy understanding of what that means to be a man.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Jeff, who and or what is important to you?
Say it again.
Who and or what is important to you?
Well, I think for me, I mean, I value, just being able to, uh, well, first off, my relationship with God, that's very, to me. It's like, it's right. It's what centers me and helps me having a healthy understanding of what it means to be part of humanity, a part of this world. And also, it helps me in my connections with other people, just knowing that, first off, I'm going to serve my God, but I'm also going to love my neighbor, and I think what I strive to do every day is try to live a selfless life, not selfish, to where I'm always trying to give back, give to others. And I'm not going to say, I mean, I'm this major philanthropist or anything like that, but philanthropy, in a grassroots sense, is really something that I strive to be. Uh, and I've been part of organizations like the Community Investment Network in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's an organization that, where we would, it's an organization of giving circles. So giving circles would meet in this conference, and we would, we all had our giving circles where we donated like a certain amount of money, to certain causes, like say $300, it goes into a pot. Everybody's donating $300 and you're able to serve your community. So I've been part of things like that in the past. And, as a social worker, because I am a social worker, um, I've worked in protective services, and I'm also, working right now. I'm working as a fatherhood engagement or fatherhood, just really doing a lot of work around, bringing fathers together and helping them be more involved, responsible, and committed parents to their children. And that's been something that has been on my radar for a long time, because when we think about father absence, I mean, it's a major problem. It's a growing problem, but it's also something that can be corrected, and what I try to do through workshops and forums and things like that is try to, bring the fathers together. And I did write a book. I wrote a book called Real Men Raise Champions. And so fatherhood has always been one of those issues, just because of my own upbringing. I didn't have my father, mom and dad divorced when I was 4. And so my father wasn't in the home. But, as a young man, you always have this yearning to be close to your father. And I have a good relationship with my father today. And I'm fortunate to have both my mom and dad still living. And I have a lot of friends who have lost their parents, and unfortunately, for various reasons. But for me, I mean, to have my father and my mother still alive and still accessible to me, is something that I value as well. I think it's very important to have that, because my father, he still gives me advice. Uh, he still encourages me, and I see the sense of pride that he has in me, and being able to, look at me and see that I'm in a relationship that has lasted for 31 plus years. I have a 20, soon to be 21-year-old son who's in college and working toward a degree, you know. So I value my wife, my relationship with my wife. I value my son, you know, in terms of you know, his just being present because he's a miracle child in itself. Say, you know, you know, you know, we've had some experience, you know, in, you know, just having children, and he's our miracle child, you know, and, you know, we just had some things that we went through just to have him and to see all the success that he's achieved in his life, you know, is really something that just brings a smile to my face. And I'm just proud of it. And, you know, I'm sure I can sit here and say that a lot of that was because of some of the things that my wife and I instilled in him, but his, I guess his determination to, you know, make something of himself. I mean, that's all him. That's not dad. I mean, he may look at me as a model, but you'd have to interview him to determine if that's the case. But all I can do is just surmise that maybe I did have a large part to do with the man that he has become. So maybe you will be interviewing him one day for, you know, King Crush Thursday.
I would love that. I would love to interview your son. There have been a number of brothers who either wanted us to interview their fathers and or their sons, and they have to see this multiple generational narrative, and you can see, you know, the apple really doesn't fall too far from the tree. Uh,
Yeah.
and sometimes the tree that the apple falls from, needs to be repaired. And when that tree is repaired, the apple that fell can also be repaired,
And
which
you know,
is beautiful.
and what I was going to interject, I'm sorry if I cut you off, but I think I think, you know, being a parent, I mean, you strive. I mean, I know as what I have done every day is I strive to give him the life that I didn't have. You know, he grew up in a home where he had both his parents that were accessible to him immediately. And to be able to, you know, be there for him, to give him advice, godly advice, but also just advice about, you know, relationships, advice about just you know, what it means to be, what does success really mean. Uh, it's not about, you know, making a lot of money. I mean, it's more about, you know, being able to take care of the things or tend to the things that have been given to you, you know, because of your hard work and dedication. So I stress that to him every day. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, once you, I mean, because he knew that he was going to college. I mean, because my wife and I both graduated from college. We graduated from the University of Tennessee. That's why I have this big T on my chest, because we are in the college football championship, and you know, we're going to represent. I have to represent too. So, but we both graduated from the University of Tennessee, and we got both our undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees. But my son, I mean, he always knew that he was going to go to college because we told him that. We said, and we also stressed to him, in order to make sure you don't need a degree to be successful, but it helps when you do have at least that undergraduate degree, because a lot of employers are looking for that. And we always preached that to him at a very early age, and he actually listened. And he's in college because he wants to go to college. It's not because we told him to go to college. So that's important to me. So now he's maintaining a 3.5 GPA. And, you know, sky's the limit. So yeah, that's me. That's what I value.
That is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it's so great to see that you're such a proud dad. That's awesome. Which brings me to question number 3, which is, Jeff, how do you want us to see you?
I would say, I think the word philanthropy or philanthropist, you know, goes through my mind. But you know, I I always had this phrase. He enjoys helping people help themselves. You know, and I think uh, I think I became a social worker. You know, because uh, I became a social worker because I wanted to help people help themselves. I mean, but it's primarily based around my upbringing. I was a child who was raised by a single parent mother, uh, who had to rely on the system, the welfare system, to keep her clothes on her back, a roof over her head, and that kind of stuff. And I just remember, at a very early age, having to stand in lines, when I was an elementary age student with my mother, and she was, these were lines where they would give you the powdered milk and the government cheese and the food stamps and, things like that. And, we all know that the quickest way for a woman to enter poverty, a woman with children to enter poverty, is to lose the assistance of a man. And my mom, she didn't have that. And so she had to rely on the welfare system to uh, make ends meet, for us. But that sacrifice, but I saw my mom, just really do a lot of things to get off of the system, to start relying on herself. So she went and got her nursing degree, went to school, got a nursing certificate, which allowed her to work in a hospital, nursing homes, and things like that. So she was able to earn her own income. And, seeing her example, especially when she was in school, because she was making 90% or better, on tests and classes and stuff like that. So she understood academic rigor and what it took, for her to be successful academically. And I'm not going to say I was the greatest student as an undergraduate student, because I really, I think I really didn't understand, because I went to the University of Tennessee to run track, and I ran track for 2 years and ended up finding out I had arthritis on my hip. I had to give it up. But I had went to the University of Tennessee to walk on to the track team. And um, but at the end of 2 years, I wasn't able to continue. And I became a regular student. And at that point, that was a low point in my life, and I had to kind of reinvent myself, like, okay, what is important? And fortunately, I did meet my wife, who was also an athlete. She played basketball, and she had a lot of success as a basketball player. She was on two national championship teams with the Lady Vols, and you got a chance to meet her, But she played for Pat Summit. I don't know if you know her. But yeah, she played for her 4 years and two national championships and things like that. But for some reason, she she fell for me. She after the regular student, man, not the athlete. So, but and 31 years later, we been together, going strong, and the thing about us, our relationship is more about, sure, we're in a committed relationship, but it's more being a team. We realize that we're building something together. It's not something that I'm building over here and she's building over there. It's we're building something together, constructing something. I mean, one thing we're constructing was a life, was her son. But then, in order for him to have the life that we didn't have, she also was raised by a mother and grandmother, grandparents, and things like that. A lot of us are raised by either single parent mothers or mothers. Of course, I don't want to stereotype, or anything like that, but because many of us are raised in two-parent households as well. But for us, I mean, our reality was we was raised by females, um, and I think one of the reasons why fatherhood is so important to me is because I want to see more men, really rising to the challenge and doing the things that they need to do, to help boys become men and or responsible men. Those responsible men become responsible fathers, to their own children. So you repeat that cycle over and over and over again.
Wow. Wow. That's there's so much. I want to say so much, but I really want this to focus on you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And so it brings me to question 4, which is, Jeff, what is your epic dream?
You know what? I'm a writer, and I've self-published a few books. My first book that I published was Adinkrahene, with A Fear of a Black Planet, which was the book that was selected for the 2015 Phyllis Wheatley Book Award. And I didn't win the prize for uh, first fiction because that was a category that I was in. But I think I was one of the top three. And I was invited to New York, Columbia University, or the campus of Columbia University, where they had this award ceremony, and I was able to participate in that. And you sitting there, and I attended that event with my son, who's sitting in the was sitting in the seats, and they call in all the nominees, and they announced the winner. And my son sitting next to me saying, "Dang, you didn't win." I'm like, "Nah, I didn't, son. I didn't." But I explained to him, I'm just the experience, because when you get selected, have something that you self-published. I self-published this book. It wasn't like it was it was picked up by a traditional publisher. I self-published this book, and for me to be able to rise to that level, be selected, as one of the top nominees for the First Fiction Award, meant a lot to me. It showed me that I had something. But to answer your question, becoming a New York Times best-selling author has always been a dream, and that's something that I work toward as a writer. Because I've written. Writing is something I've been doing since elementary school, and and now that, and I thought I was going to become a journalist because I did major in. I thought I was at the University of Tennessee. I initially went in to major in print journalism, and but I got to a point where I was, had always been working on, when I was home during the summers, I worked on the playground as a playground supervisor, working with low income, pretty much low income children. And, uh, and that was rewarding, just to be able to pour into those kids' lives and actually entertain them during the summer months. Because, if they weren't playing games on our playground, you know, then or us taking them swim to the swimming pool, to swim, what would they be doing? They wouldn't have any activities to get involved in, and many of them will probably get into trouble, So just being able to be there, that showed me that, man, I do want to help people help themselves. So, and to I want to see better outcomes, for Black and brown children. And I think that's why I went into social work as opposed to journalism. And one of the things, they said, you're not going to make a lot of money in journalism, you know. Um, and, but, I didn't make a lot. I wasn't making a lot of money as a social worker either, which is something that needs to be changed because, you got a lot of people who experience a lot of problems and they need help. They need food, shelter, clothing, and mental health services, things like that. And I think us social workers, we're those individuals who are doing the work and meeting people where they are to help them overcome, trauma, overcome tragedy, and just overcome, just themselves. Because a lot of times, uh, a lot of people are their biggest obstacles because they may have an addiction to drugs, or they may have, they can't control their anger, so they get into those domestic violence type situations, and those are things that I've seen. And I've had to meet these people where they are, and I think as a writer, that's what I try to do. Is I'm not telling their stories because there's confidentiality, but it's more about that's a slice of life that you can, or slices of life that you can use as fodder, for the fictional stories that you tell, the nonfiction books that you write, the poetry, because I also write poetry, and I have two poetry collections. One is The Wise Men Say, and the other was The March of the Compassionate Neighbor. And, so just I say all that just because I feel like I mean, becoming a New York Times bestselling author is a goal, and it's what keeps me writing. But or it's what I push toward, but because I would write even if I mean I'd write writing is important to me as breathing, so that right there, I'll always write, but at the same time you do want that validation. You want, and I think being at the Phyllis Wheatley Book Awards 2015, I mean, that was a validation for me that there's something there. And what I have to do is just keep pushing to improve, to get better. Because if you keep pushing, I mean, you will get noticed by an agent. You will get noticed by a traditional publishing house, and that's really what I strive for.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Excellent. 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 Thank you. Thank you so much. So you've been answering question 5 all along implicitly, but I'm going to ask you explicitly. Mr. Jeffrey J.A. Faulkerson, who are you?
I'm a devoted son to my mother. I'm a committed husband who adores his wife. I am, a dad. I don't want to use the same adjective. I want to have different adjectives for these, but I'm a doting dad. Let's say that. I'm doting over my son, so, because, and I'm also an author who wants to entertain, who wants to educate, who also wants to enlighten. So that's who I am. And I'm also a child of God. That's important as well. That's probably the most important. I list that as number one. But I'm someone who, you can trust. I'm trustworthy. A man who, is all about, just wanting to help people help themselves, but I also want to, just improve outcomes for people who look like me and think like me, and I'm someone who wants to collaborate with others, to do this work because it's important. It's important for us to, do what we can to make the world a better place. My son, he's going to inherit something that, when he's an adult now, he hasn't got his degree and he hasn't turned 21 either, even though he'll be 21 soon. But one day he's going to have children. He's going to have a wife, a spouse first, but then he'll have children of his own. And the world that they live in, hopefully to be just a better environment, for him and his family, and hopefully that'll be a credit to the way we previous adults, how we left the world. Are we giving them something better? Are we giving them something worse? And I don't want to, turn this into a political conversation or anything like that. But many people were disappointed, by the results of the election because now, it's like, but at the same time, it's not a time to get down. It's a time to kind of resurrect, get the work, because, it's like we know that there are attacks on history, Black history, with the talk about Black history is CRT, and we're going to ban your books and do all this other stuff. Anything that talks about has this what they call woke um, thread in it. They want to eliminate, but we all know what that means. It's more about they don't want to hear the truth. And woke is not a bad thing. Woke means you're enlightened about the issue. And there have been a lot of woke people who have taught us things about ourselves, taught this nation things about itself. But there are forces out there that don't want to hear that. And that's how they keep us divided, by kind of muffling the voices like Ta-Nehisi Coates or Nicole Hannah-Jones, or I'm dropping names now, but these are people who even uh, Isabel Wilkerson, the cast, and um, Beverly Crenshaw, yeah, Crenshaw, who David Bell, they coined the phrase critical race theory, so they are trying, we're living at a time where they are, everything that we have worked for is under attack, and it's being rolled back to divide us and not allow us to build upon the gains of the civil rights movement. And what we as a people we have to understand that, but we have to do everything we can to fight against it. And I think I'm committed to doing that. And I know others are committed to doing that. And I want to do that through my writing. And that's what I'm going to do. And a lot of this will be in my fiction. I have a book I'm working on now called Junior Achiever. And Junior Achiever, my main character, his name is Junior. Well, Junior, he is a junior, Harold Blevins Jr., and his father's name, Harold Freight Train Blevins Sr. And he's a father. Well, I'm not going to tell you the story, but it's more about it's a coming of age story where this kid, his sister, who's the sister, her father's another man. They have different fathers. Those three different kids have different fathers, but they grow up in the same household. And the mother, she commits a crime. She murders her boyfriend, who ends up having an unsavory relationship with the 70-year-old daughter. So they get thrown into custody of the state, and then Freight Train, they approach Freight Train to take on the kids, but he only takes on a junior because that's his biological child, and the other two have to remain in custody. So Junior, his whole quest is to convince Freight Train that he should take his brother Damien, who's 9, and his sister Elena, who's 17. Also, she's a promising basketball star. So she's slated go into her senior year and actually play for like a school like Tennessee or Stanford or Connecticut, play basketball. So she's that talented, but their lives just get turned upside down. And that's the novel that I'm working on now. It's called Junior Achiever. But so yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. You did. You did that and so much more. I'm enthralled by the story, and I can hear shades of your experience as a social worker as well as a nonfiction, as a fiction writer
Oh
coming
yeah.
together. And so I look forward to reading it when you're done.
All right.
And that brings us to question 6, which is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, or you wanted me to ask you that I didn't? In other words, what did I miss?
Well, you've asked a lot of probing questions, which require me to dig deep. I think the big one thing that I wish you would have asked me more about would be about my poetry, because it's something new to me. It's something that I discovered when I went to this Black Writers Conference down in Durham, North Carolina, of all places. And I went to this year's conference, but it was because this right here is the second year the conference has been in existence. It's called the Griot and Gray Owl Black Writers Conference, or Black Southern Writers Conference. But their first year was 2023, And I attended that conference, and I got a chance to be a judge at the poetry slam. So they had a cash prize was off, and so I'm judging these 15 poets, and they go through these different rounds and we score them and things like that. But as I'm listening to the poetry, I'm sitting here like, why am I not writing more poetry? And I said, huh. So I went back to my hotel room after that competition, and I just pulled out my book, or pen and paper, and just started writing, poetry, like rhyming poetry, to start out. But then I got to a point where I was writing prose poetry. So I mean, over a course of a few weeks, I produced my first collection of poetry called "The Wise Men Say," and a lot of it has political themes because you have stuff that you hear in the news and stuff like that. I write about it, but I wrote one poem that I called "The Magnificence of Your Singleness," and it was a poem that I dedicated to my mother because she was a single parent, and I looked at that as magnificent, in terms of what she was able to produce. Because my mom, I mean, even though she was a single parent, she raised three kids by herself, me, my brother, and my sister. And she, then we ended up graduating from high school, graduating from college, having families of her own, and giving her grandchildren and all that. So I talk about a lot of that in that poem, The Magnificence of Your Singleness, and in terms of what she produced from her singleness. Uh, sure, I mean, she had the contribution of her fathers, but at the same to produce us. But we were able to learn from her and grow from her, something that she's proud of. And so that's just one example of something I wrote. But then the second poetry collection was March of the Compassionate Neighbor. And the title comes from the fact that I look at us as a people, us as a Black people, as compassionate neighbors, because we have every reason to be upset at white people uh, for the way they treated our ancestors. But at the same time, it's like we have compassion, neighborly compassion in our heart. I mean, we have love, more love than hate, and we extend our hand every day, you know, and we give them an opportunity to shake our hand, to join us in creating a more perfect union. But what we hear these days is that they want to make America great again, and a more perfect union is what we should be working toward. And I think that's that because this country has never been perfect. Because how can it be perfect when you have people who are displaced, Native Americans, and then you look at our ancestors, our Black ancestors, who were captured, enslaved, and then oppressed. And that oppression continues, in many ways. Some people call it microaggressions and things like that, but the oppression is still there. And it's also a tone deafness that's in the air as well, where, the powers that be do not want to hear complaints, from us. They want us to get over it. But it's hard to get over something where when you realize that, I mean, there was a period where our ancestors were lynched. I mean, period was slavery where they were whipped, I mean, and murdered. I mean, even crossing the transatlantic during the transatlantic slave trade, crossing the Atlantic, many of them jumped ship just because they'd rather die than be enslaved, and all that. So that's a history there that, that we as Black Americans, if we forget that, forget what our people have gone through, you know, that right there would be a slap in the face to our ancestors. So we have to constantly remind people of what's going on. But that March of the Compassionate Neighbor, a lot of those poems, they speak to the political environment that we live in today. But also I do have other poems in there that speak to other things, but it's the March of the Compassionate Neighbor, because you look at 1964 when the March on Washington, and other marches and things like that. 1995, when Farrakhan, he invited many of us to Washington. Now, we didn't tear up the place. We've never tore up the place like what happened on January 6th. We came because, one, we said, see us, see us. This is who we are. We're not here to, terrorize anybody. We're here to let you know that we exist, and we're extending our hand to you as a neighborly or as a compassionate neighbor and all that. So that's what we need to get to. We need the more of us, red, yellow, black, and white, got to be more compassionate neighbors than conquering oppressors. And the conquering oppressor mindset is something that is running rampant these days. And so I make that distinction between the compassionate neighbor and the conquering oppressor. And what we want to do is eradicate the conquering oppressor. Because the conquering oppressor, he comes in many forms. He can be red, yellow, black, or white. You hear what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like whoever has power and how they use that power, they can either misuse the power or use it for the common good. And what we want to do is turn that conquering oppressor into a compassionate neighbor, because those compassionate neighbors are going to use any power that they are able to possess. They're going to use it for the common good. So yeah, so to answer your question, which you would ask me more about.
Got it. Got it. Well, I'm so glad that you answered that question. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for your presence here today. I'm grateful for your presence in the world. It's so wonderful to see a doting and devoted father and son and loving and committed husband. It is wonderful to see someone who is using his gifts in multiple ways to help to heal the world. And it's just really refreshing to see you. And so I honor you, my king. I pray that your epic dream does come true. And we'll all say, oh, we saw him. We saw him. New York Times best selling author. And I'm just really excited for you. And I just really want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now you stay right there, because I want to thank the audience for joining us. I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And if there is a positive and successful Black man in your life who you want to hear from and see in this forum, please click the link below or in my bio and fill out the nomination form, and we'll take it from there. This is just one of many different conversations, and I'm so grateful for each of them. No two conversations are exactly the same, even though we're asking the same 6 questions. I often say that success does not equal what someone does for a living. They could, in fact, be a prolific author and a social worker and a dad and a husband and a son, or not. What we are really looking for, in addition to all of these things, are those brothers who, by the content of their character, they are contributing positively to their community, be it their nuclear family, radiating out to the community at large. Those brothers we also want to hear from and have them contribute to this repository. So please, next week, stay tuned for yet another amazing king. And please remember to spread love and have a great day. Thank you so much. And Jeff, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.